So, you might have already watched the short clips I uploaded on Instagram, and I believe I left off at letting you know that the first thing you have to do is you have to find the start of your yarn, and that might be a little difficult sometimes because of the way they come wrapped. This one has all sorts of fancy twists, so it was a little difficult for me to find it, but you have to do that so that you don't ruin your yarn and waste your money. Once you found the tip, the start, what you're gonna do is you're gonna grab a little slack, and we want about this much. Honestly, the more the better, but you don't want to have too much because again, that would be wasting your yarn. So once you have your slack, what we're going to do is we're going to start by creating an opening for your index finger and your thumb to go through, just like this, okay? Once you have that opening, what I want you to do is I want you to intertwine your slack with your working yarn. And whenever I say working yarn, I'm referring to the yarn that's still directly attached to the ball of yarn. So you take your slack and your working yarn and you intertwine them just like this. And what you're going to do from here is you're going to reach down and you're going to grab your working yarn so that you can pull it through and make a knot, okay? It should look something like this. Now, I'm right-handed, so whenever I do this, I use my right hand to do the actual threading around my fingers, and my left hand acts as sort of like a mannequin. So what I'm going to do with that knot that I just made is I'm going to put my index finger of my left hand through the hole, and I'm just going to lightly tighten it. And I don't want it too tight because I'm going to want some room. You'll see why in a minute. So I put my left hand index finger through the loop, and now I have the slack, which I'm not even going to touch, not for a while. I'm just going to work with the working yarn. So essentially what you want to do is you want to take your yarn and you want to wrap it around each finger of your left hand. Not each one, only your middle finger, your ring finger, and your pinky. And you're going to do that by wrapping it starting on the backs of your finger and looping through. So it's going to go something like this. So I have my working yarn. I'm going to wrap it around my middle finger, come around the front. I'm going to wrap it around my ring finger, come to the front. I'm going to wrap it around my pinky and through the front, so that I have something like this, okay? Now, so it's hanging off my pinky, just like this. And I'm going to do the same thing, but coming back. So I'm going to wrap it through the back of my ring finger and forward, through the back of my middle finger and forward, and through the back of my index finger and forward. And now you should have something like this, okay? Now what I want to tell you right off the bat is when you're doing this, it's either always going to be your pinky with one loop or your index finger with one loop. They alternate. So that's always going to be the case. Now, so you have it like this. What you're going to do is, starting with your index finger, you are going to loop the bottom ring over the top ring, or the second ring. Just like that. Now you're going to take the bottom ring of your middle finger and you're going to do the same thing, loop it over, and you're going to push this down, and you're going to loop the first ring on your ring finger over as well. And when you're doing this, when you're wrapping them around your fingers, you want to make sure you're not doing it tight, because then you won't have much space to loop around each one, and it makes it difficult and it takes longer. So just leave a little room. So now my working yarn is hanging off my index finger. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat the same process I just showed you. So I'm going to loop through the back of my middle finger, through the back of my ring finger, and through the back of my pinky so that I have that again. And remember how we started? The pinky only had one ring, now it's the index finger. So again, we're going to loop the rings over one another. So I grab the bottom, loop through the top, grab the bottom, loop through the top, grab the bottom, loop it through the top. And when you're first starting this, it's not going to seem like much. It might even look like a mess to you, but it's a work in progress, and I assure you the end result is going to be exactly what you're looking for. So I'm going to do this a few times slowly, just so that you can get the hang of the movement. I'm going to loop it, loop it, loop it around, bring it down. I'm going to go back. I'm going to loop it, I'm going to loop it again, and once again, you want to loop these rings through, just like that. And once you get going, after you've done this a few times, you'll start seeing the way it shapes. Now, depending on how long or how short you'd like your ear warmer or scarf, you can keep track of it by counting each stitch. So right now I believe I have 6 stitches. So I'm going to do 7. Okay, that was 7. This is going to be, this is going to be 8. And it gets a little boring counting, but what I find is that once you start focusing on counting each stitch, your brain automatically relaxes. It gets tricked into thinking that counting is the only thing it has to focus on. And that's useful for people who are having a bad day, or if you're running through your head with bad thoughts. It's a good way to shut that out and just focus on counting and stitching. So we can see that it's starting to look like a pattern. So again, once you do, a few of these, it's going to start looking something like this. Okay? I did this one earlier, all finished. And I know what you're thinking. It's very thin in width, okay? So it doesn't look like a scarf, it doesn't look like an ear warmer. That is because I make more than one. Usually I make 3 rows, and then I sew the 3 rows together to one another. And see, I have another one here. So these 2 are going to be sewed together, and I'll show you how to do that once I show you exactly how to finish one of these off and tie it and all that. So for the sake of just showing you how you would finish it after you're done stitching, however many stitches you want, I'm just going to pause right here with this one and show you how you would end it. So we're going to cut a little bit of slack again. You don't want too much because, in this case it's just a little bit. So I'm going to cut that off. So now what I want to do is, I have my working yarn hanging off my index finger. What I want to do is I want to loop the entire thing. So I'm going to grab it and loop it all around my fingers so that I come to this, okay? So now what I'm going to do from there is I'm going to loop the slack around the first ring, the one that's on my pinky, and I'm going to let it go. I'm going to pull and let it go, okay? I'm going to do the same thing with my ring finger. I'm going to loop it through just like that, and I'm going to let it go completely. And then I'm going to loop it again through my middle finger, let it go, and the last finger, loop it through and let it go just like that, okay? And again, I know it looks very, small and short, but this is just me trying to teach you how you would tie a knot once you're done making your stitches, okay? As you can see, there's a certain way you got to do it. I don't know if you can see that if it's focusing, but So what you do is once you finish looping them through all of them, you grab each one, you find each one, okay? And you're gonna loop it through once more, okay? So we looped it through every ring, remember? Now it's like this, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna loop it once more through all of them. And before I, tighten it, I'm gonna wanna loop it once more so that I make a nice knot. And sometimes they're not secure enough, so I always make a second knot just to make sure it stays in place and it doesn't come apart. Okay? And there you have it. That's how you would finish it off. The other side is already tied because we started with a knot, so that one's all set. Okay? And then you have something like this. Both ends are tied together. Okay? So, these guys are going to be ear warmers. That's why they're so short in length. But to make a scarf, it would be the same exact process, except you would just need more stitches. So I believe I have a total of 27 for these guys. Okay. But when I make the scarf, which is right here, I've already made it, you can see I made 1, 2, 3, 4 separate rows, and then I just sewed them all together. But each row has a total of, I believe it was 82 stitches. It sounds like a lot, but it's really not. I'm just going to go ahead and keep this on so you can see the detail. It's the same thing I did with this, okay? Same pattern. Now I'm going to show you how to sew them together, but I feel like this is going to be the trickiest part because I don't have a nice camera that I can angle however I need it to, so I'm going to do my best, okay? If it doesn't work out, I'll try and make a second video. So, what I'm going to do now to sew both of these 2 rows together to make my ear warmer is I'm going to grab a little bit of the yarn I originally used, okay? About the length of both rows I have here, with just a little bit of slack on each end. I'll show you exactly how long I make it. So here's that, okay? Now what I'm going to do is, if you notice the back of these, I'm going to hold it this way. On each side I have 2 rings, so I have 2 here, and then I have 1 and 2 here, okay? I want to grab 2 rings. You know what, I'm going to line them up and I'm going to try and move my phone and do it that way, okay? So let's see if this is going to work out. I'll do that. I don't know if you can see that. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to grab these 2 on this one and these 2 on this one, okay? And now what I'm going to do is take the yarn I just cut off. See, this is going to be tricky, but I'll try my best. Maybe I should do it this way so you can see. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, there we go. So you saw the 2 I grabbed. I'm going to take my yarn and I'm just going to loop it through those 2 rings, okay? Just like this. And then I'm going to pull a little bit of slack. Now when you're doing this, the entire process is the same thing. Grab 2 and 2 and you loop the yarn around, okay? I really hope you can see that a little bit. Once you start doing that, you'll notice you start connecting them, okay? Probably should. Ugh, that's annoying. Probably gonna do one more up here so it's all together. And you start to see that they come together. Okay, they do come together eventually. So again, I want to grab 2 and 2, and I want to loop it through. Grab 2 and 2, and I want to loop it through. So now they're starting to connect, okay? Here, I'll move my camera and show you what that looks like. Now they're starting to connect, now that I'm sewing them together, okay? So it's the same process. Let me flip it over and show you again. You grab 2 and 2. They're always going to line up, so it shouldn't be too difficult. And then you loop your yarn through both sets, okay, all the way down. I have my yarn right here, so what I would do is I would loop it through this one, just like that. This is hard with one hand. And then I would loop it through these two. If I were using both hands, it would be at the same time, but because I'm trying to hold the camera and show you, so I'm using one hand. I would loop it just like so, all the way down, and then it would start connecting. And once you do all that, let me put this back where it was. Once you do all that, you'll have something like this, okay? This is a finished one that I did. See how it's all sewn together? Just like that. Okay? Now, this is the other part I have to show you, is how to connect them once they're sewn together, okay? Because remember, it's got to be able to wrap around your head, so I'll show you that too. Let me just finish this up really quickly so that I can show you that. And again, I'm really sorry that the quality and just the angles, they're not ideal whatsoever, but this is just something that I thought about, you know, as I was sitting there knitting myself. I thought, you know what, let me just, you know, show people how easy it can be to make something. You know, especially if you're sick, it's a perfect time to knit. You know, what else is there to do besides rest and knit? So I'm going to finish this off. Again, I'm just looping both together, 2 and 2. They're always going to be lined up. That's why it's important to count your stitches so that each one is the same. Okay? You don't want to make one row longer than the other, then you'll have a problem. And you'd be wasting yarn, which is unacceptable. So, now they're both stitched together. Let me show you what that looks like. So now they're both sewn together. That's the front. This is the back. And now, Christ, for the grand finale. So, you're gonna end up with probably 3 strings on each end, okay? But you want to cut off all but one. Always cut off the shortest ones first, and not too close either, because you want to leave a little bit of tail. So right now, this is my longest one on this side. I'm going to cut the other two, these two guys. And I'm just going to cut them maybe about there, so that I still have, you know, it's not completely gone. And on this side, this is my longest guy, so I'm going to cut the other two. And again, not too much. You want something left there. So now I have my 2 ends that I have to bring together. And I start by holding them together, just like this, okay? And this is probably the trickiest part, but I feel like the more you do it, you'll figure out your own way to, you know, connect the two. That's how I did it anyway. This isn't how I learned it, but it's the easiest way for me, and it still looks nice. So I have both ends held together. I'm going to use the longer string, okay? And basically, I'm going to sew them together as well. I'm going to find my loops, okay? There's one, the first one. I'm going to loop my yarn through that. I'm going to move on to finding my second loop right there. I'm going to loop my yarn through that. And I'm going to find my third loop. There might be more than 3. Wrap my yarn around that. And I'm going to find the last loop and do the same. Now, it's starting to come together, but I'm going to do it, oh, I didn't put it through this one. I'm going to go back and do it again because I want to make sure it's secure. So, it's together now, see? But I'm going to go back and loop it going this way. So same thing I was just doing except going backwards. I'm going to find my loops, put my yarn through that, then pull it. Not too hard though. I'm not trying to shrink what I have here. I'm going to find my opening, loop my yarn through. This is probably the worst tutorial. It's not what I was really going for. I just wanted to show you something easy. And I hope that this helps. You know, I can always make a separate video, much slower, much more detailed. This is just in the meantime. So I looped it through twice, and now you see that it's closed. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to loop this on this end once more. And when I pull it through, I'm not going to pull it tight. I'm going to want to leave a hole so that I can loop it through that, and there I have my knot. And again, I always like to make an extra knot just for security. There we go. So now it's sewn together. This is a much smaller ear warmer / headband than the one I made earlier. I made less stitches, but it'll fit somebody. And I'm just going to cut that off. And then this one we don't really need it for anything, so all I ever do is I loop it where it hangs from. I find the little hole that it's coming from, and then I loop it within itself to make another knot. And again, I gotta do the extra knot. That's just how I roll. And that's done as well. And there you have it. Okay, again, the same way you did this, or I did this, is how you do the scarf. My God. Is how you do the scarf, except you add more stitches, but it's the same exact process. So now I have both. I have both. I don't know if you can see that. Okay. And that's it, guys. That is how you make a handmade scarf in 15 to 20 minutes using only your right hand fingers and your left hand fingers and some yarn. Okay, so that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Happy holidays, and I'll see you all next year. Okay, bye bye.